I was born in Minneapolis. I've lived in South Dakota since 1968.
Okay.
We were kind of the typical baby boomer post-war family. My father served in World War II and came back from the war and met my mother at South Dakota State College. And they ended up moving to Minneapolis where they raised a family of 4 children. And I was the eldest of the 4. And we lived in the suburbs, and it was kind of the classic post-war baby boomer story of my childhood. My father was went to South Dakota State, got a degree in agriculture, and started off as a county agent in Grant County. And my mother was a nurse. She also graduated from South Dakota State, and they both practiced their vocations until I was born, and then my mother quit nursing until she had all 4 of us in college, and then she went back to nursing again. The Zinter name comes from, well, there's 2 halves of me. There's Zinter, and then there's Eidsness. And I have to say, I'm equally proud of both my German and my Norwegian heritage. So the Zinter side comes from northern Brown County, southern Dickey County, North Dakota. That's where my father's ancestors came from, Minnesota across to that area. Their farm was originally right on the over the line into North Dakota, and then they moved to a South Dakota farm right across the state line. And so most of the immediate Zinter family are either in northern Brown County or southern Dickey County, North Dakota. My mother is an Eidsness. Her father came from Norway. My grandfather came from Norway when he was 19. He was the eldest of his family and the only one to come over. And they eventually settled in the Lake Preston, North Lake Preston area in Kingsbury County, South Dakota. So, although my initial, I was born in Minneapolis and spent my initial grade school and junior high years there, my roots go back to 2 different places in South Dakota. Well, just the typical happy, boy, you know, it was so much different in those days. You played outside, you traveled, you wandered, you explored, and unlike today, you know, your parents didn't need to worry about where you were. We walked blocks to school every day, which is kind of unheard of today with, you know, the danger that is out there for children. And so it was different in that way than for children today, but a very happy childhood with 3 great siblings and the typical all-American family. My parents just wanted to enable all of us children to be the best we could be. And they didn't steer us or direct us. They were of the type, I think, that they would be the opposite of what you would call helicopter parents today. They would be at the other end of the spectrum. They just wanted the foundation there to be able to, so that each of us could do our best. I have 2 children and a wife of 39 years. My wife Sandy, and a daughter Sarah, and a daughter Kelly. One is a lawyer who graduated 2 years ago. She practiced as a law clerk for a year, and is now spending a year with her husband, who's finishing a residency in Michigan, and she'll be returning to North Dakota to practice law. My other daughter graduated from South Dakota State with a degree in construction management, and she works in that field for a company in Watertown. She has two children, Jack and Emma, who we enjoy and love, and Sarah has one son named Sawyer. My wife and I were a year apart in college, both at USD, and both in the business school. And we never met until I graduated from the business school. And it was the year before law school was to start. And a mutual friend of ours introduced us at the Coyote Student Center. And so we both had business degrees. We hit it off, and after a year and a half or so, almost 2 years, we got married right before my senior year in law school. A brother that's 3 years younger. He is a accountant, financial person who lives in Minneapolis, and has been in that profession his whole life. I have the youngest are twin sisters who came a year after my brother, and one of them is a dentist in Vermont, and the other is a occupational therapist who lives in upstate New York. I started high school in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, but finished, I actually started, it would have been the 7th grade, and then finished high school in Sioux City, Iowa, Central High School. The building is still there. It's called the Castle on the Hill, if you've ever been down there. On graduation from high school, I was looking at either the University of Iowa or the University of South Dakota. And ironically at that time, even though I was an Iowa resident, it was cheaper to go to South Dakota. And I had a lot of friends that were going there, and I had friends a year ahead of me that were at USD, and so I just kind of gravitated to USD. Graduated there from the business school with a degree in management and economics, and then went to law school at USD and completed my law school degree. Oh, it was wonderful. I look back, people complain today about Vermilion, and Vermilion is Vermilion, but the college experience I look back on as probably some of the fondest memories I have as far as growing up. What a wonderful experience it was to go to USD those 7 years for me, probably until about my junior year in the business school. And I think between some of the business courses, especially business law, it kind of piqued my interest, and I started thinking about it probably about my junior year in undergraduate school. There were a couple, Jerry Johnson from the business school was just outstanding economist and professor of finance. Dr. Calvin Kent, another professor who had a great influence on my economic thought today. was a big influence. And you know, it's amazing. I think that we underestimate teachers because I think when I think back on it, a high school English teacher probably had as much impact on me as anything. It's amazing. It took me until high school for her to impress upon me the importance and need of knowing English and knowing grammar and doing it correctly. And so she would go in the list as well. And then, of course, in law school, there were some notables. Professor Driscoll, from day one, that you're shaking your knees walking into law school, was a huge influence, and many of the faculty at the law school were. I had a unique opportunity. When I was a senior in law school, a friend of mine who was a year older, we were talking one day, starting to think about looking for a job. And he said, you know, you got to meet this guy. I met the most incredible person I've ever met in my life. His name is Bill Janklow. And he said, this guy is a legal aid lawyer down in Rosebud on the Indian reservation. And he's running to be Attorney General. And this guy is incredible. Well, Janklow got elected, and one thing led to another, and I ended up interviewing with him for a job, and he brought me to Pierre to start his practice as Attorney General in 1975. So I look back on that as how would I say it? He was such a mentor. It was extremely important, I think, to the rest of my life and to my career. He was a wonderful educator and a leader and a mentor. I went to work for Attorney General Janklow, and I worked for him for 3 years. And he was a mentor and a slave driver, and he kicked us out of the nest early. We were trying murder cases and serious felonies, 2 years out of law school by ourselves. So that was a wonderful experience. I probably would have stayed longer, but then he decided to run for governor, and I wanted to practice law. And so when he went to the governorship, then I went into the private practice of law here in Pierre with Schmidt, Schroeder, and Caldwell. After 8 years of practice there, I was appointed to the bench. I took office in January of 1987 as a circuit court judge in Hughes County. Actually, there's 14 counties in the Sixth Circuit, but I spent most of my time in Hughes and Stanley counties, although I did travel to all the circuits, all 14 circuits in the Sixth Circuit. Well, Governor Janklow.
Okay.
So that's why I go back to say it was kind of ironic and had a big part in my life. He appointed me to the circuit court. He said, he called me up one day and he said, Zinter, you should be a circuit court judge. And I said, I don't want to be a judge. I like to practice the law. And we had a nice practice. And I really did not decide until the last minute or agree to it. But he talked me into it, and I went through the application process and was qualified and was appointed. Circuit judges, if there's a vacancy, then the governor fills the appointment. Every 8 years, others have an opportunity then to run against a sitting circuit judge. And the one time that I was eligible for election after my appointment, no one chose to run against me. So I served 15 years on the circuit court bench as a trial judge before I was appointed to the Supreme Court. Well, I heard cases, all the courthouses were not accessible when I was appointed, and we made do in most of them. Sometimes we held court in the county commissioner's room, but I think I held court in every county in the Sixth Circuit except for Sully County. There was just no way to get in that courtroom, but otherwise I'm pretty sure I hit every other county. There was an opening on the Supreme Court, and it happened to be for my district, and in fact it was Justice Bob Miller, Chief Justice Miller, was retiring. And I guess it's also ironic, I followed him onto the circuit court bench in 1987. I replaced him, and then I ended up replacing him on the Supreme Court in 2002. So I was encouraged to run again. I really enjoyed being a trial judge. And I didn't know if I wanted to forego the people experience that you have as a trial judge. But again, with some encouragement, I decided to apply. So I applied and was appointed to that position in 2002. You know, the difficulties are the tough cases. We just this term, yesterday, we heard a death penalty case. And under South Dakota law, those cases have to be reviewed by this court, and they're reviewed de novo. In other words, we have to make our own judgment about them, and that's very difficult. Cases involving children are very difficult. It's easier to decide business and money cases than it is people cases. But you know, as a court official, you're dealing with people's liberty interests. You're dealing with their money and their property. And anytime you do that, that's very serious. And because we are the court of last resort in South Dakota, it's a very daunting and serious task. Every single case that comes before us, we know that we're the last word. There's very little chance of an appeal from this court. And so that's very difficult. I think I bring a well-rounded background to the bench. In my undergraduate studies and in my law school studies and then in my practice, I've done almost all the different practice in all the different areas of law and had a wide variety of human experiences. And I really think that is very beneficial, because in a court like ours, where we're one of, I believe it's only 5 states that's an appeal of right state, which means that everyone has an absolute right to appeal their case to this court. We hear such a wide variety of cases that I think the broad background that I bring to the court is very